Chapter 447. It's not that there are no weapons made of gold, on the contrary, there are many, but such a large number is the first time they have seen it. Even a group of celestial dragons are equally stunned. Indulging in the world of luxury, it's also the first time they have seen so many weapons made entirely of gold. Clang, clang, clang. Immediately, under everyone's stunned gaze, all the weapons floating in the sky fell and piled up into a mountain. Is 3 billion berries enough? The cold voice sounded again. Dustless's eyes fell on the woman who presided over the auction. Their value is far more than 3 billion berries. Swallowing a breath, the black-haired woman who presided over the auction was stunned. Money is definitely good, but you must have a life to take it. If you dare to blacken the celestial dragons in front of you, you can only blame yourself if you are killed. These weapons made entirely of gold are handmade and are of great value. They have to be multiplied several times on the basis of gold to estimate their value. 3 billion is naturally the price of this mermaid, and the rest is your reward for pleasing this uncle. Dustless waved his hand impatiently, doing the posture of a nouveau riche, looking like a fool with a lot of money, although it's ridiculous that celestial dragons are like this. The people in the auction house heard the words and their mouths twitched. They looked at the mountains of gold weapons, and their breathing was stagnant. No one could be relieved in front of tens of billions of berries. This woman, I'm going to take her away now. With a gentle stroke of his thumb, the large water tank on the ground floated up strangely and slowly moved toward Dustless's position. Regardless of everyone's reaction, he went straight to the exit of the auction house. And, as if remembering something, Dustless's footsteps suddenly stopped. He turned his head, revealing a cold half of his face, and the hostility around him made strange changes around him. Everyone's heart was in their throats, and there was a feeling of being on the back. Although an idiot like you is not worthy of me asking for help, cold ripples appeared in the void and Wu Chen's voice spread out. I didn't intend to kill a person like you who doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken, but you actually pointed a gun at me. Go to hell. Poochie. Poochie. The golden weapon that fell to the ground suddenly became restless, flashing a mysterious halo. The celestial dragon who had pointed a gun at Dustless was about to open his mouth and scold Dustless, but suddenly he felt pain in his body and his vitality was rapidly draining. Looking closely, his entire body had been pierced through by 10 sharp weapons. You will regret this. His hysterical song resounded throughout the silent auction house, but he still fell to the ground unwillingly. His eyes had completely lost their luster, and his body had been pierced through by 10 weapons. Even a living immortal would not be able to save him. Hearing the last roar, Dustless just smiled and didn't even turn his head. A mere celestial dragon was not worthy of his attention. When the Tenryubito was killed, the entire auction house immediately became restless and began to flee. It won't be long before the admirals of the Marine headquarters come to find trouble. I seem to have chosen the wrong person. I've miscalculated. In the transparent water tank floating in the air, Princess Aji's delicate face changed slightly. She had only hoped that Dustless would be able to lend a helping hand. Although she had been rescued, it seemed she had stepped into a deeper hell. Looking at Dustless vaguely, Princess Aji's heart was particularly depressed. She found that she was really naive. Even if the Tenryubito in front of her was really different, he was still a Tenryubito. In particular, Dustless was bold enough to kill Tenryubito at will, which was far beyond her imagination, and it was for such a frivolous reason that Tenryubito held a gun. Many young people had already been popular in the world. At the harbor, Dustless stepped on the big ship that had been waiting for a long time in advance, and the water tank floating in the sky was naturally the same. After a while, there was a harsh whistle, and the ship began to move slowly toward Mariehua, and the chaotic island behind him was left behind. In a warm room with spacious facilities, Dustless circled around the huge water tank, sometimes showing a look of wonder, sometimes showing a look of contemplation and covetousness. The corner of his mouth raised a teasing smile, and an energy fluctuation came out of his finger, and the delicate glass tank suddenly burst. Boom! Princess Aji, who was caught off guard, fell directly to the ground and groaned in pain. To be honest, I really have an interest in dissecting you. The body structure of an unmarried child, the crazy scientist in the Marine headquarters should be very curious. The casual words suddenly made Princess Audrey's face pale. I can promise you anything you want. Biting her silver teeth, Princess Audrey said seriously. People have to bow their heads under the eaves. What's more, this time she left the Fishman Island rashly. She also asked the master of the world government, Tenri Yubito. Dustless smiled with satisfaction when he heard the words and whispered, you know what's good for you, and the 3 billion berries were not spent in vain. The soft laughter had a mysterious magic, and a faint ripple spread. At the moment of contact with Princess Audrey, the slave collar on her white neck also fell. My request is very simple. I am not interested in you at all, but the child in your body is the price of 3 billion berries and the reward for saving you. In addition, I can send someone to safely send you to the Fishman Island. Without the slightest concealment, Dustless directly stated his purpose. At the same time, I can also sign the document that you came for. The Fishman Island will coexist peacefully with humans from now on, and the fishmen will no longer be enslaved by humans. This condition is not ungenerous, but there is no smile on Princess Audrey's face. She can't do it at the cost of her child. Sorry, that's impossible. Even though she was already a prisoner, Princess Audrey's voice was still 30% pleasing to the ear and 70% elegant, making one feel relaxed and happy. Even if she is a prisoner, or even reduced to the level of a slave, she still has an indescribable majesty. Kneel down and vote for the heroine. Chapter 448. Hearing this, Dustless's face outlined an imperceptible arc. It was impossible to make this strong woman yield in a few words. You don't agree? His eyes narrowed, and the light from his eyes was very dangerous, making Princess Audrey confused. The thinking of the celestial dragons is jumping up and down, and they change their faces faster than flipping a book. You don't seem to figure out your current identity. His voice was low, Dustless sneered, and there was evil in his eyes. I am a celestial dragons, a synonym for ghosts and beasts, and you are my slave. Anything is possible. Looking at Princess Audrey, looking at her graceful body, Wu Chen said with a smile full of deep meaning. Perhaps the character of the fishman is too naive and romantic, and her mind is simple. Princess Audrey just stared at Dustless blankly, and did not understand the meaning of Dustless's words. That's it. Poochie. The corner of her clothes then shattered, and her snow-white skin was exposed under Dustless's line of sight. Her white skin was tinged with red, and her jade-like bones were incomparably beautiful. Looking closely, the corner of Princess Audrey's clothes had split open. You shameless despicable villain. Hurriedly covering the place where the spring light was exposed, Princess Audrey glared at Dustless, and her delicate face trembled with anger. Staring at the indifferent face of Dustless, she suddenly realized that describing him as a despicable villain was simply a slander. In her mind, she remembered the brutal past of the celestial dragons, and her heart fell to the bottom of the abyss. Although you are pregnant, the celestial dragons are all hungry wolves. Even if you are pregnant, it is not impossible for them to lay their hands on you. Anyway, you are just a slave. This kind of thing is not unique. Ignoring the angry and desperate Princess Audrey, Dustless said with a smile. If you dare to have such an idea, I will kill myself immediately. Staring at Dustless without fear, Princess Audrey decisively warned, and at the same time, doubts inevitably arose in her heart. She really didn't know what Dustless wanted to do with the child in her belly. I already have one. If I can die, you can give it a try. Hearing this, Wu Chen spoke tirelessly and calmly. His tone was full of confidence. Moreover, Princess Audrey was a kind-hearted person. These words were only used to scare Dustless, hoping that he would dispel the thoughts in his heart. Even if she was not afraid of death, the child in her belly was innocent. But it's useless to have you now. Her ability hasn't awakened, so she can't be used. It's also troublesome to adopt her temporarily. After a moment of silence, Dustless's words let Consort Audrey see the dawn of hope. It was not hard to see that he had no intention of imprisoning Consort Audrey. According to Dustless's guess, Neptune's ability is similar to Haushikuhaki. It does exist in Shirahoshi's body, but it still needs to be awakened on its own. If it can't be awakened, it is useless to stay with Dustless. After thinking about it, he chose to let nature take its course. He is not a god, and the awakening of Neptune's ability needs an opportunity. Before that, I must leave my mark on you and your mother. 3 billion berries cannot be spent in vain. In one sentence, Princess Aji's hope was once again extinguished. Dustless's tone was beyond doubt. The power of Neptune is beyond doubt. After awakening, he can even control Neptune with a volume of more than 5,000 meters. Even if it is a bug more than 5,000 meters, it can also turn the world upside down. Princess Aji's body floated uncontrollably again, ignoring the law of gravity, and fell lightly in front of Dustless, staring at the pink beauty close at hand. Dustless was expressionless. His face, which was still lecherous before, was now lifeless like a sculpture. "What are you doing?" Out of instinctive fear, Princess Aji asked with a trembling voice. Dustless just chose to be silent. He stretched out his index finger and fell on the place where the skin was exposed before. A warm touch was transmitted to the nerve endings along the thumb. After a slight shock, a black evil force passed along Dustless's thumb into Princess Aji's body. "What am I doing? Of course, I am branding you and your mother as slaves." After just a few seconds, Dustless retracted his index finger, then looked up at the pink face, and said in an unquestionable tone, "From now on, you are my things." It's that simple. His handsome face was frivolous. Dustless didn't care. It was not difficult to see that if it were not for the existence of Shirahoshi in the body, Princess Aji would be a dead soul under the sword. Aji's face changed dramatically when she heard this. Suddenly, she felt that her body was controlled by some special force. If she had any thoughts of suicide or other unrealistic abilities, the special force would surge into her internal organs and mind, and her body would be out of control. In fact, it coincides with the curse that Uchiha Madara implanted in Obito's body. "Remember, for me, your master is the world's aristocrat, Royce South, sage." The indifferent face was replaced by a cold storage. Dustless's simple words labeled the mother and daughter as slaves. Once they have any unrealistic thoughts, the curse in their body will surge out of Dustless's power to stop their actions. To some extent, it's also another kind of protection. "In that case, you have to sign the treaty I brought." At this point, even if Princess Aji's face was full of unwillingness, she could only compromise. In the world where the strong are respected, without strength, you can only be trampled and destroyed. This is something that can never be changed. It's good to enjoy the shade under the big tree, but it's not free to enjoy the shade under the big tree, and you have to pay the price. That is, the mother and daughter will be slaves forever. The idea is still naive enough. Human and fishman can coexist with each other. This is just your wishful thinking. The hatred between the two races has been deeply rooted, and it can't be resolved by a paper treaty. Taking the treaty handed over by Princess Aji, Dustless shook his head slightly, and signed his name. Female protagonist's problem-begging speed vote. Chapter 449. In the early morning of the next day, the beautiful fiery red sun fell on the surface of the sea. The surface of the water was dyed golden. The sparkling light was extremely dazzling. The sea within a radius of 10,000 miles was covered with a golden coat. It was extremely beautiful. Princess Otoji naturally rested on Dustless's ship. After knowing how shameless he was, Princess Otoji did not sleep in the middle of the night. It was not until the next day that she breathed a sigh of relief. Last night was the most difficult period of her life. "Why are you so nervous?" "I won't eat you." Princess Otoji was temporarily placed in the cabin. Dustless swaggered in. It was just that his dressing made it difficult for people not to think wrongly. His pajamas were half naked, revealing a strong and powerful chest. Obviously, he had just woken up. What do you mean by celestial dragons don't understand etiquette and shame? No matter how good her attitude was, Princess Otoji's heart was filled with anger. Especially Dustless's casual look, as well as his reasonable expression, made her even angrier. It was no different from entering his own wife's room. Etiquette and shame? Curling his lips, Dustless sneered disdainfully, "This is my territory. Naturally, I have the final say. And a mere slave dares to talk arrogantly with his master. Who is the one who doesn't understand etiquette and shame?" His sharp tongue made Princess Otoji speechless. Yesterday, she had been labeled as Dustless's slave. Hearing this, Princess Otoji clenched her silver teeth. There was a crystal mist in the depths of her eyes. She looked like she was about to cry. The dignified princess of the Fishmen Island had become a slave. It was the biggest joke in the world. What made people sigh was that it had little effect on Dustless, a person with a heart of stone. "You are free. You can leave this ship now." Glancing faintly at Princess Otoji, Dustless did not care about the latter's sluggishness. He simply turned around and left. Walking to the bow alone, he quietly stared at the bright sea. The current Princess Otoji was useless in Dustless's hands. Naturally, he did not need them. Leaving them would only add to his troubles. Is it a Navy ship? Closing his eyes, he breathed in the cool breeze from the distant seaside with a relaxed mind. After stretching his body comfortably, he opened his eyes again. Suddenly, a warship similar to the Navy appeared on the distant sea surface. The color of the hull is similar to the Navy, but the flag is obviously different. A world government ship? Dustless frowned, and he was quite surprised. The flag of the world government was clearly visible on the railing, and then he remembered what he did yesterday, and the killing intent in his eyes disappeared. Dustless killed the celestial dragons yesterday. In this world where the celestial dragons ruled, the consequences were self-evident. With the passage of time, the world government ship gradually approached. Dustless was stunned when he saw the person who came out of the cabin. They had met several times before. The admiral of the Marine headquarters, Buddha Warring states. "General Sengoku won't come to arrest me, will he?" Dustless asked as his eyes fell on the serious Sengoku. The celestial dragons were attacked, and the admiral of the Marine headquarters was personally dispatched. Obviously, this hard work fell on Sengoku. That's not it. Everyone is colleagues now, and the celestial dragons killed the celestial dragons. This kind of thing is not something I can manage. Hearing this, Sengoku just smiled bitterly and shook his head. The grievances of the celestial dragons were not something he could manage. The entire Marine knows that Dustless is the so-called honorary admiral, and there are definitely no more than 5 people. At present, only Admiral Kong, Garp, and Vice Admiral Tsuru, including himself, know. Even the retired Admiral Z doesn't know who he is. This is the latest order from Admiral Kong. The strong and powerful body fell on the deck, and Admiral Sengoku handed the confidential document in his hand to Dustless, and said with a somewhat envious tone, "Of course, it's your freedom to participate in this mission, and no one will force you." Taking the top-secret document in his hand, he saw the order to execute Kaido. "I'm not interested in participating in this kind of thing." Shaking his head resolutely, Dustless refused. He was not bored enough to watch the live broadcast of Kaido's execution, and this kind of thing can be seen through the image Den Mushi. According to Dustless's guess, Admiral Kong is obviously up to no good, and this is to take him as a laborer in case of accidents. But then again, looking up at the world government flag on the mast, Dustless wondered, why did Admiral Sengoku come here on the world government's ship? The Marine belongs to the world government, but it is also a separate department. The Marine's battleship naturally flies the Marine flag, and the world government's ship also has its own unique flag. "I just came here. Their ship's performance is better than the Marine's, so I hitched a ride in advance." Spreading his hands, Sengoku said quite casually, with a little helplessness in his tone. As soon as his voice fell, a harsh whistle sounded on the distant sea. Looking up, it was the Marine's battleship. "There have been a lot of things recently, and there are still a lot of things waiting for me to deal with the execution of Kaido. Goodbye." Facing Dustless, Sengoku's eyes flashed with a hidden color, and then he stepped out of the sea with Jeppo, moonwalk, and swept toward the Marine's battleship not far away. This is interesting, the person who can make Sengoku avoid looking back at the world government's battleship, Dustless said to himself with interest. Sengoku is a Marine admiral, and people who can make him feel uncomfortable must not be ordinary. Step, 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 the sound of leather shoes walking sounded, and the strangely dressed people suddenly entered Dustless's line of sight. Looking at this group of people, his doubts turned into understanding. No wonder, Sengoku is an admiral of the Marine headquarters, and this group of people is really uncomfortable. Several figures came into sight, Dustless can barely recognize them. These people are only loyal to the celestial dragons, and the orders of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, have no effect on them. Celestial Dragon's biggest lackey, CP0. Rolling on the ground and acting cute. Chapter 450. CP0 gives the world the feeling that they are a special existence in a mysterious cloak. They are rarely heard of, and what they know is very limited. They only know that they are the officials of Tenryubito, and the objects of their service and loyalty are all Tenryubito. However, the reality is different. For example, Dustless, although he is a Tenryubito, let alone order the mysterious department of CP0, he has not even heard of it. CP0 does obey Tenryubito, but people like Dustless are not the objects of their service. Royce South, Saint. Just as Dustless was meditating, the emotionless voice sounded in advance, as cold as an iceberg. In a trance, Dustless felt that he was talking to a robot. Although the words were very cold, Dustless could hear that there was no hostility in the tone of these people's words. Your subordinate's hand is too long. After a long time, it was obvious that he was the leader of these people. The tallest man spoke to Dustless with a hint of warning. Is it possible that you are talking about Hawkeye? The brow frowned slightly and thought about it. At present, only Hawkeye, who is seizing the surgeon fruit, meets the conditions. Dustless just sneered again and again when he heard the warning in the other person's mouth. Staring at this group of so-called CP0, Dustless's eyes were cold and murderous. You're just a lackey. How dare you threaten me? Wuchen sneered with an unruly smile on his face. No matter how strong these so-called CP0 are, in the end, they are the lackeys of Tenryubito. Dustless is naturally not afraid of them, and his tone is full of provocation. However, to Dustless's surprise, even if they were so ridiculed, this group of so-called CP0 did not refute, their faces remained unchanged, and they always maintained the same indifference. Perhaps subconsciously, they have regarded themselves as the lackeys of Tenryubito. All in all, the consequences are at your own risk. There is an essential difference between the surgeon fruit and other devil fruits. The tone in the corner of his mouth was suddenly blocked. The tall CP0 suddenly realized that he was talking too much and then closed his mouth. He turned a deaf ear to Dustless's insult and walked into the cabin as if he didn't hear it. These people are really thick-skinned. Nothing can get through to them. Dustless looked speechless and bored. He thought that he could knock out something from these people's mouths. He didn't expect the so-called CP0 to be so afraid of the special group of Tenryubito. Dustless originally thought that as long as he said a few words of provocation, this group of people would gang up and attack him. That way, Dustless could also move his stiff body. Master, Royce South, holy sage, as you think, did refuse your kindness. In the brightly lit cabin, the tall and elegant girl stood gracefully. Her golden hair was coiled up, she was dignified and elegant, her temperament was noble and elegant, her holy blue eyes were full of tranquility, like the first blooming of a green lotus, her delicate facial features were uncanny. Even if the holy sword in her hand has not been drawn, you can feel the vicissitudes of life. There is also a mark unique to Tenryubito behind her. Obviously, she is also a Tenryubito. This person is the so-called fiancée of Tenryubito, Alice Clea. It's to be expected that you'll return empty-handed. Although I've only met him once, his impression of him has always lingered in my mind. If a few words can really make him feel at ease, it would be a fantasy. Thinking of Dustless's deep scarlet strange eyes, Clea still has a dreamlike feeling, and his words are still in her ears. Under these eyes, any ability in the world is full of flaws, even if it is a god. Under my eyes, there is no way to hide. It's really arrogant. Clea's mouth showed a meaningful smile, and then remembered the Tenryubito who was killed by Dustless before, and sighed, "Don't worry about it, let him go." Instead, the one who died is the kind of harmless small character. On the deck, Dustless stood alone and stared at the government ship in the distance. "Start something," recalling the short conversation with the CP0 before, Dustless raised his eyebrows and his expression was a little confused. "It's just a surgeon fruit, there are so many involved." After a long silence, Dustless, who didn't think of anything, looked up to the sky and sighed. The abilities of some devil fruits are indeed incredible, and they have escaped the definition of the word devil fruit. The strange and unpredictable abilities are not worse than the abilities of the legendary gods. At the same time, on the other side, there was an unprecedented shock. On the island, blood was all over the ground and deep into the snow. Looking around, there were corpses with wounds all around. It was like a hell on earth, and countless people fell to the ground. The Don Quixote pirates swept in all directions with a devastating momentum, and the birdcage covering the entire island in the sky was clearly visible. Now the island is completely dead. "Corazon, I asked myself to be kind to you, why did you betray me? Also, the traces of law and the surgeon fruit, give me all of them without missing a word. Don't force me to throw the last mercy in my heart out of the sky." Doflamingo stepped on the half-dead figure under his feet and pointed the dark muzzle at his head, and asked coldly without emotion. Looking confidently, it was his younger brother, Corazon. "Betrayed you?" Corazon heard the words and closed his eyes, recalling the past. The scenes of his brother shooting his father and cutting off his head and sending it back to Mariewa were all played in his mind. "It's you who betrayed your parents, not us who betrayed you, Dover." His eyes were always closed, and it seemed that seeing this so-called brother would make him sick. Hearing this, Doflamingo's face suddenly became gloomy, and the blue veins on his forehead began to bulge. He asked in a cold voice, "Give me the surgeon fruit, that's what I use to curry favor with the big people in Mariewa." Suddenly, a young figure popped up in his mind. Doflamingo roared furiously as he thought of the godly figure who had recently risen like a comet. He was full of fascination. That devil's fruit was used to hug the big boss's leg. Rolling around and acting cute. Chapter 451. Doflamingo, who took off his glasses, showed scarlet eyes, and he looked as ferocious as a ghost. In this world, there are only two possibilities if you want to live unscrupulously. The first is strong strength, and the second is a strong background. If you have both, or one of them, you can be safe and unfettered in the world. "Who is the person you want to curry favor with?" His tone was raised a lot, and Corazon asked. Apparently, he was also curious about the person who deserved Doflamingo's favor. "You don't need to know this. It doesn't matter if you don't say it. In short, the surgeon fruit must still be on this island." The dark muzzle was aimed at Corazon's heart, and Doflamingo said coldly, "Goodbye, my former brother, Corazon." The only remaining conscience in his heart disappeared, and the fetters of Doflamingo's blood were completely cut off, and his finger did not hesitate to pull the trigger. Bang bang bang, the dark muzzle emitted white smoke in succession, and several fatal bullets whistled out. Corazon's breathing also stopped, and his short life came to an end. After sweeping Corazon's body for a few seconds, Doflamingo's low voice spread throughout the world of ice and snow. "The surgeon fruit is on this island. Whatever the cost, find it for me." In the luxurious and warm villa, Dustless was sitting on the soft sofa with his legs stretched. Boa Hancock was carefully pinching the tender flesh of Dustless's legs and doing nursing work. A pair of dexterous little hands pinched the standard, firm and soft, and the movements were extremely skilled. The strength of each acupoint was controlled extremely skillfully. It was neither heavy nor light, and Dustless was extremely comfortable. After a long silence, Dustless's closed eyes suddenly opened. What's wrong with Royce South? Hancock, who was very confident in her skills, suddenly tilted her head and wondered. Hancock was dressed in a black maid costume. Her graceful body was vividly displayed. Her delicate face was like a budding flower. Her eyes were as clear as water. Her eyes were particularly holy. Dustless's eyes were also different, with heat waves. Royce South, you. Seeing Dustless's hot eyes, Hancock's movements suddenly stiffened, and she instinctively retreated. In front of Dustless, thousands of mountains and rivers were in the blink of an eye. At such a close distance, Hancock naturally could not escape the devil's hands. The weak body was in Dustless's arms in an instant. His aggressive eyes were extremely sharp, and unscrupulously looked at Hancock's mature, tender body. The saints said that food and sex were human nature. Naturally, Wu Chen, who had a mortal body, was no exception. The viciousness of the celestial dragons was well known throughout the world. It was not too much to say that they were stallions. Wu Chen showed a pure heart and few desires, but he was still a part of the celestial dragons. Royce South, I can help you with my hand dash. The anxious panic words were blocked by Dustless's thumb. Staring at the smiling Dustless in fear, Hancock struggled to speak, but there was a mysterious force in her mouth blocking her throat, making it difficult for her to speak. Although the touch of your little hand is good, it's too hasty. This kind of thing can't be rushed. In my opinion, it's better to use. Dustless's joking voice was suddenly blocked. At the same time, his hand gently rubbed Hancock's delicate lips. What he meant was self-evident. Just a little hand, too simple and rough. Hancock, who was nearly 18 years old, naturally understood this truth. She wanted to refute, but she couldn't open her mouth. Dustless didn't simply ask for a slave, which was already giving her face. The supremacy of celestial dragons has been deeply ingrained in her mind. After thinking about it, Hancock nodded helplessly. She had no right to refuse this kind of thing. The consequence of not knowing the so-called is to lose the most important thing. Gently touching her bare chin, under Dustless's expectant gaze, Hancock's thin lips moved. Rogue Town, located near the entrance of the Grand Line. The previous generation's pirate king, Jold Roger, was born in Rogue Town and was executed here. It also has a unique name, the town of the beginning and the end. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, dark clouds rolled, and torrential rain raged. Even so, there were thousands of citizens and a large number of reporters gathered here. On the deliberately built execution platform of several meters high, the strong and powerful body was clearly visible. Kaido was tied with sea-stone handcuffs, and his ability was imprisoned, and his body was weak. Even if his body was imprisoned, and thousands of power was banned, Kaido was still domineering. Looking up at the sky, a pair of copper-sized eyes looked down at the people below, and a sense of heroism was born in his heart. The place where the pirate king was executed seems to be a good place to die. However, Kaido did not intend to stop here in his life. I'm not going to die. The vigorous tiger roar shook the clouds and spread throughout the world. It resounded throughout Rogue Town and fell into everyone's ears. It was filled with some kind of special and mysterious power. Even the heavy rain that was falling down was stopped in an instant. This momentum. Fortunately, I caught him. Otherwise, he will be the most difficult opponent in the future. Admiral Sengoku on the execution platform was slightly stunned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. So far, there is no middle or lower level strong person in the Marine who has reached this level, and the future is worrying. You Marines really think you can kill me? It's not like you haven't been caught before. If I remember correctly, I sank a lot of prisons. Turning his head, Kaido looked at Admiral Sengoku with disdain, full of contempt and ridicule. Hearing this, Sengoku just smiled, with a gloomy smile on his mouth. Yes, you're right. This time is an exception. It's because your turtle shell is too hard that the executioner will be the old man himself. Chapter 452. Kaido is an extremely dangerous character. His ability is extremely powerful. He has been captured by the Marines several times. However, in the end, he escaped with his powerful ability and strength. Not only that, he retaliated by directly sinking the prison that once imprisoned him. It is self-evident how fierce he is. If you think you can escape from my hands, you can try. Sengoku's eyes fell on Kaido, and he said indifferently. The observation haki spread out silently, and Sengoku Admiral sneered secretly. Pirates will always be pirates, they are all rats, and it is difficult for them to become great things. In the dense crowd below, Sengoku's observation haki silently brushed past, and even the slightest flaw in the crowd could not escape his eyes. There is a road to heaven but you don't walk, there is no door to hell but you throw yourself into it. As a pirate, your ugly malice can't be changed, and your mind can never be changed. Dogs can't change their habit of eating shit. A few years ago, when the pirate king Roger was executed, many pirates ambushed the crowd and secretly watched the end of the pirate king Roger. For example, pirates such as Red Hair Shanks, Hawkeye, and Doflamingo have all witnessed the scene of the pirate king Roger being separated forever. If they could be killed in advance, there would not be such a violent and uncontrollable scene today. This kid's weight is much worse than Roger, but he also attracted a wave of pirates. It's a waste. Sengoku looked at Kaido without a trace and nodded slightly. Kaido is also a big pirate, and he is only slightly inferior to Whitebeard. Despicable. Kaido's eyes were full of disdain. His life was full of ups and downs. He was also a figure of the older generation in the sea. He didn't need to think about it to know that the entire Logue town was gathered by thousands of Marines. It's your honor to die with a group of martyrs. At least you should thank the Marines. You have done evil all your life, and you can have such a luxurious funeral. Even the pirate king Roger is envious of you, Sengoku chuckled, and his voice was as thin as a mosquito, and only he and Kaido could hear it. However, you don't have to feel lonely. There are people with even greater backgrounds waiting to be tortured with you. You won't be lonely on the road to the Yellow Springs. Sengoku said mysteriously, and with a wave of his hand, two Marine generals pressed a big man with golden hair on his body. Kaido was slightly stunned. He turned his head, and the figure that entered his eyes made him speechless for a moment. Even the hostility in his body disappeared. Golden Lion Shiki? After being stunned for a while, Kaido took a deep breath. Hearing this, Golden Lion just curled his lips and sat down casually. His hands were shackled by sea stone, and he didn't even look at Kaido. You want to execute me and this little devil together? Is your marine so poor that you don't have any funds? Regardless of the occasion, the whole deafening lion's roar spread out and swept through everyone's body like a wave. He was arrogant and disdainful like the king of the sea, full of indifference. Kaido trembled with anger and did not hesitate to curse. These pirates are quite hot, especially Kaido, who has been famous for several years. There is no such word as endure in his eyes. A living fossil of the previous era, you dare to talk big when you are reduced to a prisoner. If the pirate king Roger comes back from the dead and sees your miserable scene, I'm afraid he will think that having the same name as you is the biggest stain in his life. Smart Teeth immediately launched a fierce counterattack, but the effect was negligible. Golden Lion was obviously absent-minded, and his domineering eyes dimmed. He seemed to be immersed in memories, thinking of the days when he fought with Roger and Whitebeard. The sudden appearance of the figure immediately attracted the attention of the reporters under the execution platform. They all stared at the blonde Golden Lion in disbelief. He looked battered and exhausted, but he still looked majestic without being angry. Countless flashing cameras immediately aimed at him. Kaido, who was beside him, was dispensable. The world that was not calm once again set off monstrous ripples. Holy Land Mariewa. In the luxurious and warm villa, Dustless was lying comfortably on the sofa. He had just enjoyed the service of Boa Hancock. His face was lazy and listless. Through the image of Den Den Mushi, the scene of Rogue Town can be clearly seen. It's really boring. killing 2 people and making such a big fuss. Picking up the exquisite tea set that was steaming, Wuchen took a sip of tea gently. The purpose of the world government and marine headquarters is also very simple. It is the same idea as the public execution of Roger. It is nothing more than to improve the support of the government and marine. Dustless, Sama. The space rippled, and a hoarse and urgent voice spread. In the empty room, a white figure drilled out of the ground, revealing some spikes on his body. White Zetsu. Dustless suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. If it was not a special event, White Zetsu would not easily come to him. Immediately, Dustless's voice became cold, faintly murderous. There is a problem with Hawkeye, and the surgeon fruit has fallen into his hands. With a bitter smile, White Zetsu said helplessly. He and Hawkeye were very fast, but someone was faster than them. When they arrived at the trading place, the outcome had already been decided, and the fruit of victory had already been picked by others. Doflamingo or his brother Corazon. With a relaxed face, Dustless asked naturally, and his tone did not change at all. Hearing this, White Zetsu looked at Dustless strangely. He thought he would be angry, but he didn't expect him to be so calm. Then he remembered the person who took away the surgeon fruit, and his face was full of guilt. It's not the 2 brothers, but tell me in the comments section of your favorite heroine, and I can add it if it's appropriate. Chapter 453. Dustless just sat quietly, silently, tasting the tea by himself, and sometimes shaking the water stains in the teacup, making ripples. The little devil in White Zetsu's mouth is undoubtedly Trafalgar Law. It doesn't matter, if the surgeon fruit is eaten by our own people, it doesn't make sense. Although some things happened suddenly, I can reluctantly accept this outcome. Dustless was unexpectedly calm, and his eyes just quietly looked at the scene of Log Town and the image of Den Mushi. The reason why Dustless cares about the surgeon fruit is that he simply values the ultimate operation of ageless surgery. The other is dispensable. The cost of using ageless surgery is the life of the original ability user, and it is useless for his own people to eat it. The first task was met with such an unexpected accident. Hawkeye should be frustrated. Swordsmen are arrogant, and Hawkeye, who is at the top of the kendo, is also the same. No, the little devil named Law seems to have been caught by Hawkeye. Shaking his head gently, White Zetsu reported truthfully. These words extinguished Dustless's hope, and White Zetsu was very serious. In the end, it's just a creation, and it doesn't understand what human nature is. Shaking his head, he glanced at White Zetsu. Guru, Dustless and White Zetsu were chatting, but the Den Mushi in his arms suddenly rang. Dustless took out the Den Mushi, and there was a flash of surprise in his eyes. This is what he communicated with Hawkeye. The little devil named Law ran away. Before Dustless could ask questions, Hawkeye's gloomy voice sounded on the other side of the Den Mushi. Is it Doflamingo? Ripples appeared in Wu Chen's calm eyes. Wu Chen asked calmly with a little suspicion. It's not that Dustless looks down on Doflamingo. Now he is strong, and he is also a big pirate with a little reputation. It is impossible for him to challenge Hawkeye and take Law from him. Is it Vice Admiral Tsuru of the Marine? Dustless's eyes flashed with brilliance as he thought of the great staff officer who recently hunted Doflamingo. Although Vice Admiral Tsuru of the Marine's strength is mediocre, she is also a figure of Roger's time, and it is not impossible for her to hide her strength. It's not Vice Admiral Tsuru of the Marine. Hawkeye said with a hint of complaint in his voice. No matter how fragile he is, he doesn't think that an old woman in her 50s can take it from his own hands. On the snow-covered island, Hawkeye's expression was indifferent. His right arm was stained with blood. The person's is. It's SSSS. Thinking of the mysterious man in the green trench coat, his eagle eyes were boiling. His whole body was filled with killing intent, and his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, gathering cold light. The SSSST, the ability to control the weather. Dustless, who was on the other end of the phone, sighed and asked, the world is full of wonders, and there are countless unheard of abilities. Don't worry about him. How about the tracks of that brat Luo? Turning the thread of discussion, Dustless pulled the question to Law again. I don't know the details, but the one who attacked me seems to be a clone of the main body. It's very strong. According to my guess, Law has most likely fallen into the hands of the other party. Since the other party had launched a surprise attack, it meant that they had made preparations in advance. Looking at the blood stains on his arm, Hawkeye said cautiously. The people he killed before finally dissipated like light and shadow. What an interesting fruit ability. It's all-encompassing and can even create clones. It can even control the various elements of nature. I didn't expect it to be able to control so many domains. It seems like it's also some kind of unknown fruit. Dustless, who was far away in Mariewa, was quite surprised as it was the first time he had heard of such a strange ability. That's interesting. Dustless smiled with a faint arc in the corner of his mouth. White Zetsu thought that Dustless would be furious. After all, this devil fruit was stared at by Dustless for a long time. Now, even the cooked duck has disappeared. He had worked so hard and calculated everything, but in the end, it was all for naught. Come back first, I have other things for you. He calmly said to Hawkeye on the other side, and then closed the den mushi. After that, Dustless fell into contemplation. This kind of fruit seems to be recorded in the Devil Fruit Illustration Handbook sent by Gora Ci, 5 Elder Stars, before. As for the host of the ability user, it is unknown. All in all, it is definitely an extraordinary ability. Dustless, who knows Hawkeye's nature, naturally does not doubt him. Hawkeye is not the kind of hypocrite who deceives people casually, not to mention that White Zetsu was present at the time. The situation in Roguetown seems to be wrong. White Zetsu's slightly surprised voice suddenly came. Dustless was slightly stunned. He also raised his head and stared straight at the scene projected from the image of the den mushi, puzzled. The dark clouds in the sky were rolling and squirming violently, the dazzling thunder and lightning crackled, and the sharp sound made people's scalp numb and their ears dizzy. A silent and deadly oppression spread, and by the time they realized it, it was already too late, and breathing was dozens of times more difficult than usual. What's going on? Sengoku was stunned. He had been in the sea for half of his life, and he had trained a pair of unusually shrewd eyes. This sudden supernatural phenomenon was obviously deliberately man-made. TSK, you've spun a cocoon around yourself. How dare you drag me out and sentence me? You despicable people deserve such an ending. Golden Lion, who had no scruples, laughed wildly, full of endless ridicule. Even so, his eyes were full of horror, and he was shocked by the power of the thunder and lightning in the sky. The Marines are all sanctimonious hypocrites, and the Emperor can't stand it anymore, so he deliberately sent down the thunder to test you. Kaido was also gloating, but his face was gloomy. There was a strange feeling in the dark. The spearhead of the thunder and lightning in the sky was him and Golden Lion. Chapter 454. Thunder and lightning is one of the most dangerous factors in nature. To some extent, it is the derivation of the will of heaven and earth. In the face of God's anger, it is human nature for human beings who have always been obedient to be afraid. In the face of God's anger, no one can get rid of it. Human beings are emotional creatures. In the face of supernatural phenomena that have never appeared before, especially this kind of ability that only God can show except for God, everyone at the scene became panicked in an instant. The thunder and lightning that can destroy all things pressed them out of breath, and their hair stood up uncontrollably. Death seems to be close at hand. There is a voice warning them that as long as they stay for a second, they will die. What the hell did the damn Navy do? Even God is not pleasing to the eye. In the chaotic crowd, someone finally couldn't stand the deadly oppression and left with a roar. The mysterious power of thunder and lightning is the nemesis of all creatures. Especially the monstrous thunder and lightning in front of them, it is obviously aimed at them. His escape immediately caused a chain reaction. In the face of the dense destructive power, everyone was afraid of death. They all scattered in all directions, fearing that they would not be able to escape in time. The quiet scene was immediately rioted, and the frightened crowd was like boiling ants, scrambling to leave one after another, except for some powerful people, or people lurking in the dark who watched silently. One wave is not over, another wave is coming. With a sigh, Sengoku on the execution platform was gloomy. At present, Kaido and Golden Lion have not yet been executed. Now the sudden change caught him off guard. Where is the anger of God? It can fool the ignorant world for a while, but there is no way to hide under his eyes. This is obviously someone deliberately manipulating it. If it is the anger of God, the world government and the celestial dragons have been accomplices to evil for hundreds of years, and they will not appear like today. Bastard, I will catch you and make you look good. But speaking of which, what is this ability? After cursing fiercely, Sengoku frowned. This strange and unpredictable ability, he has never seen it before. He began to recall the ability recorded in the devil fruit illustration book in his mind, and the strong people he has fought before. It seems that they have not used this kind of ability. Could it be the rumble fruit, which is known as the strongest ability user in nature? Suddenly there was a flash of light in his mind, and Sengoku gloomily guessed that only the ability of rumble fruit has this ability to control thunder and lightning. There were also records of the devil fruit in the illustrated handbook. Rumble fruit? How could he explain the violent storm from before? Also, the lightning brewing in the sky seems to be targeting us. If I can drag you down with me, I think Roger will be very happy. Unfortunately, there isn't that old man Garp. In the face of the choice between life and death, Golden Lion was unexpectedly calm, and his tone was unprecedentedly relieved. The successive failures had made him see through life and death. Kaido, on the other hand, was different. Although he maintained his composure, one could still see the hidden fear in the depths of his eyes. Now that his hands and feet were shackled by sea stone, he couldn't use his ability. In front of him was the admirals of the Marine headquarters, and behind him was the divine thunder dancing proudly in the sky. There was no chance of survival. Kaido is not Golden Lion. He can't be as calm as him. He still has a good life ahead of him. The Kaido pirates in the New World are still waiting for the return of the strongest king. Drag me down with you? Dream on. Hearing this, Sengoku sneered again and again, and his eyes were shining with a cold light. Not to mention that he was still alive and his ability was not imprisoned like Golden Lion and Kaido. Even if he was hit by thunder and lightning, he didn't think he would be killed. Sengoku's body suddenly emitted a golden gloss. The dark clouds rolled in the dark sky like the night, and the gorgeous light was particularly bright. Sengoku did not hesitate to show his ability and turned into a tall Buddha. The mighty and extraordinary light of destruction made Kaido's heart desperate. Sengoku, you old man, the execution time is not up yet. Do you want to kill me in advance? If you do, the entire Marine headquarters and the world government will lose face. Kaido's mouth twitched fiercely, and he roared at Sengoku. Once he was hit by the iron fist covered with golden light, he was sure that he would die. This is the highest combat power of the Marine headquarters, not a weed on the roadside. Don't be surprised. Golden Lion Shiki turned his head and glanced at Kaido with a contemptuous look. Obviously, he was not surprised by Sengoku's means. Villains are not worthy of sympathy, and there is no need to talk about morality. The word benevolence and righteousness is insulting to pirates. In the face of Golden Lion and Captain Kaido's sarcasm, Sengoku just replied as usual. Kaido and Golden Lion have killed countless people together, and it's not enough to describe them as a pile of mountains. Buzz, Kaido raised his arm indifferently, and a round air cover condensed in his palm. The breath of death covered his whole body. Kaido's eyes turned scarlet, and under the shadow of death, the nature of a beast broke out. I will not let you go even if I die. Kaido roared at Sengoku, and the bark of 100 Beast Kaido resounded through the sky. This time, it's goodbye forever. Hearing this, Sengoku smiled. He didn't want to argue with the dead. He looked at Kaido and Golden Lion indifferently. In his eyes, they were just like corpses. The attack condensed in his hand rushed out. Boom. 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 At the same time, the thunder and lightning that had been accumulating in the sky for a long time reached its limit, and at the moment when Sengoku launched the attack, it also crashed down. In an instant, Sengoku, Golden Lion, and Kaido were all swallowed. On the other side, Dustless finally arrived at Rogue Town. He stared at the majestic thunder and lightning in the distant sky, and then walked toward the center of the incident with indifference. Chapter 455. The rolling dark clouds were surging, and the squirming was no different from human organs. It was extremely oppressive. The scattered black mist was frightening and horrifying. The turbulent dark torrent seemed to be able to distort time and space, and the sky was blurred. What a strange ability. Looking up at the sky, after a moment of contemplation, Dustless retracted his gaze, and then walked forward with a cold face and a dark mist behind him. The dark clouds in the sky were not on the scale, but they were the true portrayal of Dustless's heart, gloomy and evil. It turned out to be him. Although unexpected, it coincides with my guess. He has the ability to create doppelgangers. Of course, I don't rule out the possibility that Hawkeye is mistaken. In the quiet alley, Dustless walked alone, and his eyes released an awe-inspiring aura. He had already guessed who took Law. The person who took Law, and the person who deliberately created thunder and lightning in the sky to attack the Navy, Dustless's heart has been determined. Boom boom boom. The wooden execution platform, under the impact of the Senshi Sengoku's ability and the violent impact of the thunder and lightning at the same time, disintegrated in an instant and turned into debris. Sengoku, Golden Lion, and Kaido were all swallowed by the thunder and lightning and turned into silver flashing people. Bastard, I can't move. Sengoku's face was blue, and his body trembled uncontrollably. He could not launch an attack and was about to fall to the ground. His eyes subconsciously looked at Kaido and Golden Lion, and the scene in front of him made him vomit blood directly. Hey! God is on our side, you are in trouble, Sengoku. I don't know when, the sea stone shackles that bound Golden Lion Shiki and Kaido's hands and feet have disappeared. The two grimaced and winked at Sengoku. The thunder and lightning of the stone directly shattered the sea stone on their body, and the two were able to regain their freedom. Hey! There is a limit to being arrogant. In the face of absolute justice, even God has to follow the trend. Even though the anger in his heart continued to rise, Sengoku suppressed it very rationally. The more angry he was, the more arrogant Kaido and Golden Lion Shiki would be. Moreover, even if Shiki the Golden Lion and Kaido the 100 Beast were like tigers out of their cages, Rogue Town was filled with Marines, and they couldn't escape even if they had wings. Boom boom boom, 3 figures fell to the ground one after another, creating 3 large pits. 100 Beast Kaido and Golden Lion Shiki jumped up and joined forces to attack the Buddha warring states. Bang! A figure suddenly appeared out of thin air and launched an attack without anyone noticing. Caught off guard, Kaido was blasted away by this powerful force. He smashed through several walls and spat out a mouthful of blood. An old man wearing a cloak of justice descended from the sky. His rough face was majestic and unyielding, his hair and beard were all white, but he was still full of energy. He stared at the Golden Lion Shiki and the 100 Beast Kaido with awe-inspiring eyes. Although the dog head hat on his head was extremely funny, no one dared to look down on him. It was Vice Admiral Garp, the hero of the Navy. Cough. Worthy of being the hero of the Navy, your fists are really, painful. 100 Beast Kaido's face was pale and he couldn't help but cough up blood. Even so, he still struggled to stand up again. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. I knew you were deliberately playing with this old man. Seeing this, Garp only grinned. At the same time, he leaped up and a huge silver light whizzed out, easily pulling the ground out of the abyss. Rankyaku. The dazzling silver luster made people unable to look directly at it, and Kaido was the same. Such a strong light made him have to close his eyes to avoid the destruction of the strong light. It didn't matter if he closed his eyes to fight, for Kaido's observation haki, it didn't matter. I'm not that kind of small character. You want to kill me with this kind of thing? You're looking down on me. A huge fist comparable to an iron bucket condensed and swept out a dark red flame luster. The head of a beast was clearly visible. It looked like a dragon or a tiger, mighty and extraordinary. There was a faint roar of a dragon and a tiger, full of majesty, and then a punch blasted out. Boom, boom, boom. The two forces were obviously at the same stage, and when they came into contact with each other, a violent explosion occurred, and the surrounding environment changed with the rewriting. The Yonko, 4 emperors, who are destined to rule the world in the future, can't be so fragile. Although Garp is strong, he can't kill Kaido directly. Leader, why did you save Shiki and Kaido? They are the opposite of our ideas. Pirates and Marines are the enemies of the revolution. In a dark underground tavern, a few black shadows spoke to the mysterious man in the overcoat with slight dissatisfaction. The man in the green coat just kept silent and didn't speak. Suddenly, he raised his head, and by the dirty light, he could vaguely see the messy tattoo marks on his face, and his eyes were full of wisdom and rationality. It was Monchi D. Dorag. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Dorag explained in a hoarse voice. He also knew that this group of people was dissatisfied. After all, saving the pirates was the opposite of his revolutionary ideas, and he must appease this group of people. To resist foreign aggression, one must first pacify internal affairs. This was the principle that the ancient sages had concluded. To some extent, pirates can barely be regarded as partners of the revolution. With a gentle smile, Dorag gave a mysterious answer. In short, people who can harm and disturb the world are our partners, especially Kaido and Shiki. After breaking out of prison, they will be more hostile to the government and marine. These pirates will attract the attention of the world government and marine, which is good for us. I'm sorry to trouble you. But, Law, please be sure to return him to me, otherwise, I will be very distressed, Mr. Dorag. A ghostly voice resounded through the silent and oppressive space, and a figure came out of the darkness. It was Dustless. Chapter 456. Dustless, who came out of the darkness, sneered at the corner of his mouth, looked at several people seriously. Only Dorag was extremely mysterious, and Dustless felt that he was covered with a mysterious veil. There was a sense of looking at the veil in the fog. Dare to invade the base of the Revolutionary Army? Looking for death. One of them, aware of the sudden appearance of Dustless, took advantage of the situation, and immediately shot a murderous look in his eyes, and without nonsense, he directly turned into a black afterimage and rushed toward him. The ferocious smile was full of cruelty, and the sharp cold light swept toward the head. Vulgar, take your knife home and kill pigs. Raising his eyelids, Wu Chen didn't even look at the person who launched the sneak attack. He raised his right arm casually and directly grabbed the cold light that was coming towards him. Hey! A roar similar to steel sounded, and the scene in front of them was quite simple. Dustless just casually used a thumb to block the incoming Tachi. There was nothing else, and the movement was very simple. This unimaginable scene caused everyone to be unable to come back to their senses. Armament hockey? It doesn't seem to be. Dorag's equally calm face flashed a trace of surprise. Dustless's fingers still maintained the color of normal human skin. Obviously, with the hardness of his body, he can be as hard as steel. Go to hell. Raising his left arm expressionlessly, his thumb gathered a large number of light particles, and in the dark environment, the light was instantly released, and he looked cold and whistled out. Pucci. The golden light was unstoppable, and the head of the Revolutionary Army cadre had a scorched hole, and the light that penetrated his head went straight toward Dorag. It's useless, this fragile attack can't hurt me, Honorary Admiral of the Marine Headquarters, Royce Nan, Saint. His whole body turned into ice dregs, and he easily used the elemental transformation to ignore the incoming light beam. Dorag said to Dustless, I've investigated your ability and identity. I know very well that this kind of ordinary trick can't even hit my body. You know that I am an admiral of the Marine Headquarters. And you know my real name. Frowning deeply, Dustless's cheeks were replaced by confusion and incomprehension. No one knows that he is an honorary admiral except for Mariehua's Gorasii, 5 elder stars, and a few high-level marines. No one knows who this honorary admiral is. Now that Durag directly revealed the identity of General Dustless and even investigated the matter of his celestial dragons, it was hard for Dustless not to be surprised. This guy, does he have spies in the world government or the marine? Clenching his fist, Dustless's face became colder and colder. Durag's mind was meticulous, and it was not impossible for him to plant his own spies in the marine or the world government. Dustless hated traitors and people who threatened him the most in his life. Being able to know his identity meant that the identity of the spy was not low. As for Marines, Hero, Vice Admiral Garp, Dustless ignored it for the first time. He had seen the upright and stubborn old man, and it was impossible to persuade him to betray the Marine with a knife on his neck. I didn't expect you to be so far-sighted, and the whole world underestimated you. His eyes fell on Durag's face. Dustless sneered again, and then he disappeared, and his original body turned into a slowly fading afterimage. However, your expression of knowing everything is really unpleasant. Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? Looking at Durag indifferently in front of him, Dustless kicked out. Insignificant skill, as I said before, this kind of fragile attack can't hurt me. Aware of the strong force behind him that was enough to destroy a building, Durag's light and calm voice resounded through the dark space. He could have avoided it in time, but he didn't move his body at all. Obviously, he was mocking Dustless with his actual actions. Boom! The destructive power was beyond imagination. Durag was easily blown away, setting off a strong explosion, and all the buildings around him were turned into ruins. The secret room that was tens of meters deep on the ground was buried under Dustless's foot. Boom! Under the ruins, a majestic repulsive force spread out, and the buried debris was easily lifted, and Dustless's figure was directly exposed to the air. Hand over law, or else. The consequences are not something you can bear. His cold eyes stared at Durag in the deep pit, and at the same time, his heart was gloomy. This guy's ability was beyond his imagination. This guy doesn't seem to be a Logia user, but he can achieve elementalization, and his body is too hard. Recalling the feeling of Durag's body when his foot fell, Dustless secretly guessed that it was not like a human body, but like a monster full of scales. Thinking of some kind of legendary creature, Dustless's pupils dilated. Could it be that this guy really lives up to his name? He can transform into a dragon that soars in the sky? Wuchen clenched his fists and said rather gloomily. He couldn't help but look at Durag in a new light. It's not that he is afraid of mysterious creatures like dragons, but in every world, dragons belong to the top predators in myths, and it's inevitable that he is curious and shocked. Although your flashy attacks are strong, they are unable to break through my defense. Standing up easily, Durag said to Dustless, his tone was absolutely rational, and he was not arrogant. Your purpose of getting law is not simple. Celestial dragons are really selfish. I can't figure out why the old man obeys the orders of your group of scum. Not simple. Funny, that kid robbed me of the surgeon fruit I bought with 5 billion berries. I didn't kill him directly, but I will train him in the future to be loyal to me. Hearing this, Dustless sneered again and again. In fact, the real transaction object of the surgeon fruit is himself. As for Doflamingo and Marine, they are disruptors. Chapter 457. The majestic hostility spread out and stared at Durag ferociously. If he could really transform into a dragon, he would not be intimidated. No matter how similar the devil fruit's ability was to the essence of a dragon, there was still a world of difference. Let's see how thick your turtle shell is. The dark clouds in the sky suddenly became extremely bright. It was far more dazzling than the daytime. Looking up, the void behind Wuchen was dotted with countless vortexes. Dazzling divine weapons swept out from them. Treasure of the king. With Dustless's command, thousands of lights were shot out in an instant. In just a short moment, no less than thousands of various weapons were shot out. It's dangerous. Durag, who was agile and sensed danger, retreated without hesitation. With such an overwhelming number, no one could treat him as heir. Bang, 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 dodging the sharp golden weapon that was piercing towards him from behind with extreme agility, Durag seemed to be at ease. Stepping on the air, he stepped on the air in a weird way and rushed towards the seaside of Roguetown at full speed. Dustless, who was chasing after him, floated in the sky. Behind him was a large number of peerless divine weapons that were constantly falling. Is there no limit to the weapons in this ability? Dolag said with a frown. In less than a few breaths of time, thousands of divine weapons had already flown out. Dolag's right arm was covered with sharp spikes, and he crushed a golden divine weapon that was piercing towards him. The attacks that were as dense as a storm did not show any signs of stopping. Durag was burning with passion. No matter what he did, he could not do without money. Puff. Puff. There must be a loophole in every defense. Even if there were thousands of defenses, it was difficult to achieve perfection. There were still many sword lights that swept past Durag's body, leaving messy bloody marks on his skin. In the face of such a dense number, even with the dragon scale defense, he was still covered with cuts and bruises. Just leaving such negligible scars, if one had to find a perfect creature, only a proud and mysterious existence like the dragon could be qualified. Perfect attacks, impeccable defensive scales, and even the legendary ability to control the 5 elements. In short, the ability was as numerous as the hair on a cow, and they were all the kind of strange existence that was shocking. Is it because he's Luffy's father? Thinking that such a powerful fruit might fall into the hands of Drago, Dustless couldn't help but feel envious and jealous. The number and range of the divine weapons behind him increased dramatically. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Clang clang clang, the ear-piercing rumbles continued, one after another, one wave after another. The golden divine weapons that fell from the ground formed a magnificent golden avenue. Only a cyan scale armor appeared on Durag's body, which easily defended against the incoming weapons. That old bastard must be planning something. Gazing at the boundless ocean in front of him, Durag was obviously not fleeing aimlessly. He must have some unknown purpose. In the future, Durag was able to overthrow the world government's allies one after another, which made the world government so angry that they couldn't find a trace of him for several years. This was enough to prove how extraordinary his brain was. Although Dustless despised this mouse that only knew how to hide and stare expressionlessly at the distant horizon, his heart was as calm as still water as he stared indifferently at the distant void. Boom boom boom, the dark clouds in the sky were violently squirming, and the ear-piercing thunder resounded through the sky. The irregular thunder and lightning condensed, and a thick beam of light pierced through the sky and immediately roared down. The target was Dustless. The speed of the thunder and lightning was extremely fast, and at the same time, it happened suddenly. It was inevitable that the whole person was hit by the dancing thunder and lightning in the sky. Immediately, an unprecedented feeling of paralysis spread to the nerve endings. His body twitched for a while, and even the most basic control was difficult to do. This is just the beginning. Seeing this, Durag just sneered again, and suddenly waved his big hand, and the whole sky trembled under his hand. The thunder and lightning in the sky stopped, and all the thunder and lightning converged. Dustless was still unable to move. He just floated in the air strangely, motionless, and his eyes were dull and dead. Seeing this, Durag's face was indifferent. He waved his big hand again, and the strange scene appeared again. Suddenly, a gust of piercing cold wind blew in the void, and the monstrous snow followed. Obviously, it was controlled by someone, and all of it wrapped around Dustless, who was already unable to move. In less than half a second, Dustless's whole person was swallowed and annihilated by the white snow, and turned into a huge snowball that was large enough to cover the whole earth. Still far from it. As Durag's voice fell again, the thunder and lightning sounded again, and the sky was filled with heavy rain. The combination of water and snow made the big snowball more solid. Caw caw caw, just when it was about to show its power again, visible cracks appeared on the surface of the snowball. The surface that was supposed to be white was actually eroded by some mysterious blue power. That's a very evil feeling. Narrowing his eyes, Durag carefully stared at the blue light, and suddenly he had a creepy feeling. He could vaguely see the vague outline of a giant. It's really a wonderful performance. Manchi di Durag. The calm voice came out, containing an indescribable special energy. It lingered in the void for a long time and did not dissipate. The huge snowball slowly collapsed, revealing a burly figure. If you can really become a dragon, you can give it a try. I also want to see whether the complete Kinsusanu or the legendary dragon is stronger or weaker. After that, the complete Kinsusanu moved with the momentum, and the long sword was unsheathed. The awe-inspiring sword wind cut through the thorns and was divided into two by the sea. What kind of monster is this? Durag lost his calmness, and said in a hoarse and gloomy voice. He stared at the blue giant that was hundreds of meters high. Even with his composure, he was sitting on pins and needles at this moment, and the shadow of death covered his whole body. Chapter 458. The complete form of Kinsusanu was equivalent to completely stepping into the realm of God. It was one of the invincible abilities that could only be activated when the strength reached an unprecedented level. Both the attack and defense were sublimated to an incredible level. Boom boom boom, accompanied by a loud bang, a long and narrow crack appeared on the calm sea, stretching and extending without limit. The scale was tens of kilometers long and boundless. Looking up, even if you wanted to see through it, you couldn't see the end at a glance. Is this your true form? Durag's tone was full of surprise, and he clenched his huge fist tightly. He didn't expect the gap between the two to be so big. In front of the gorgeous golden light, Durag also felt a fear from the bottom of his heart. Both sides were completely dimensional, especially the scarlet eyes that looked at him made his soul tremble. Even so, he couldn't just wait for death. Dense green scales emerged all over his body, and Durag's body also underwent an amazing change. This guy is really a dragon fruit, a rare species. Wuchen touched his smooth chin and carefully looked at Dolag, who had turned into the state of a mythical beast. There was a meaningful smile at the corner of his mouth. It is precisely because of this that it has value. At a glance, Durag's body had already transformed into a snake body that was several hundred meters long. Its entire body was covered in dense scales, and its dragon head and antlers were extraordinarily mighty. Its elegant body completely ignored the existence of gravity as it floated in the void. Bursts of dragon roars resounded through the void, splashing out visible ripples, and the ancient dragon roars spread throughout the sea. The battle between the two behemoths quickly attracted the attention of the navy and the pirates in Rogue Town, and they all looked at the battle between the two prehistoric creatures in horror. Hundreds of meters of insects can also overturn the sea when they move, not to mention these two behemoths. Ow ow ow, Durag, who was soaring in the void, revealed to the complete form of Kinsusanu, and the hot air in his mouth was blowing out, revealing his big mouth full of fangs. Is it useful, overconfident idiot? A contemptuous smile appeared on his cold face. He raised his ancient katana again and stared at the dragon flying toward him. Then, he mercilessly slashed down, and an awe-inspiring and domineering saber wind swept out again. The light that cut through the thistles and thorns streaked across the sky. Wherever it passed, there would be slight distortions. The sharp roar made people dizzy, and the saber wind that scattered in all directions was especially domineering. Even though they were hundreds of meters away, they still felt a prickling sensation on their skin. Pucci, even though its whole body was protected by hard scales, Durag was still covered with wounds. Blood splashed everywhere. The dragon that was roaming in the sky suddenly fell down and turned into a dead snake on the ground. Its aura was so weak that it could be ignored. It was struggling at death's door, only relying on its instinct to float. You're surprisingly weak, dragon. Dustless curled his lips in disdain. Just as he was about to remove the complete Kinsusanu, the arrogant dragon raised its head again and glared at Dustless ferociously while speaking in human language. Then I really disappoint you. After suffering such a serious injury, Durag's vitality was unexpectedly strong. it still maintained a state of high spirits. Its dragon eyes were glaring at Dustless, and its prestige was not reduced. A strange color flashed in its eyes from time to time, as if it was calculating the odds of victory. Let's take a gamble. After careful calculation, the reason in Durag's eyes was replaced by madness. When it was about to launch a sneak attack, Dustless's cold voice spread in the vast night. Until now, you still think that you still have the confidence to defeat me. Shaking his head helplessly, Dustless really didn't know where this guy's confidence came from. Now that his head was broken and bleeding, he still maintained his eagerness to try. But then again, this guy is such a powerful fruit, I might as well make use of it. The value of controlling him is far better than killing him. With a gleam in his eyes, Dustless secretly decided. According to the ability shown by Durag before, the dragon fruit he used should have the ability to control the 5 elements. The strength of the ability can be imagined. Especially at such a young age, Durag obviously hasn't exerted the fruit's ability to the limit. If he wants to exert the dragon fruit to the fullest, he still has a long way to go. Don't worry, I changed my mind. Instead of killing you directly, it's better to keep you in captivity. After squeezing out your value, I'll kill you like garbage. Dustless in Kensusanu had a gloomy face, and the laughter from his mouth made people's scalp numb. The scarlet 5-pointed star eternal kaleidoscope was even more evil and demonic. It would be a pity to kill Durag directly like this, especially the dragon fruit he used. Dustless was also very envious of the ability to transform into a dragon. If I can snatch the dark fruit one day in the future, with my body's toughness, I can definitely have the same fruit's ability as Blackbeard. At that time, I can kill Durag and obtain his ability. Thinking of Blackbeard who dominated the sea in the future, Dustless's eyes were filled with fanaticism. The reason why Blackbeard could devour other fruits was firstly because of the dark fruit's ability, and secondly because of his special body structure. On the surface, it was similar to a human's, but in reality, there was a world of difference. Dustless didn't think that his body was worse than Blackbeard's, and he even had an advantage over him. The only thing he lacked was the dark fruit. Want to control me? Dream on. Durag roared indignantly. No matter how calm he was angered by Dustless. Dustless's words clearly meant that he wanted to raise him as a slave. This was intolerable. Dream on? I don't like to dream, and you seem to have entered the end of the predicament. You are in a dilemma. Hearing this, Wu Chen just quietly stared at Durag's body that was full of wounds. He couldn't help but sigh secretly. Although there was the factor of bullying the weak now. Chapter 459. In the future, he could be called the most vicious criminal in the world, which also reflected what kind of person Durag was. If he was an ordinary person, the world government would not give him such a good name to set him off. Before you were in your best state, you could only withstand one move. Now with this kind of behavior, the threat to me is even less. Your dying struggle has no effect except for more wounds. Durag in front of him was covered in blood, and wounds of various sizes were all over his body. His breath was weak, and he was no different from an old man in the wind. In the eyes of Dustless, he was already a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, and his life was in his hands. If you can, I will give it a try. I will not bow to a villain like you even if I die. Durag didn't want to talk nonsense. He was a man of ideals and beliefs. If it were other conditions, he might be able to endure it. Durag understood the principle that a real man should know when to stretch and when to shrink. However, Dustless's conditions exceeded the limit of tolerance. The leader of the revolutionary army became a slave who shook his head and begged for mercy in order to survive. He couldn't do it no matter how broad-minded he was. I won't accept people like you even if you really bow your head. Shaking his head, Dustless said casually. Durag's ambition is known to the world. His ambition is not limited to an island or a country. The so-called dream is to liberate all mankind. Dustless will also be uneasy with such an ambitious explosive around him. It is better to directly modify his memory. You don't seem to understand the situation. You may be enough to devour the whole world, and you will not be liked by anyone, and I am no exception. The golden evil light converged in an instant, and the huge giant disappeared. Dustless floated alone in the boundless sky, and his left eye began to undergo amazing changes. With a lavender base, a circle of mysterious black lines spread out, and 9 mysterious black magatama hung on it. What a strange eye. The information collected before did not mention that he had this eye. With a cautious look, Durag's dragon eyes were full of vigilance. In the next second, Durag's body also returned to its normal human form. It was not difficult to see that maintaining that state was very strenuous. Activating the devil fruit consumed physical strength. The previous dragon god state consumed dozens of times more physical strength than usual. Even after years of hard training, he still felt tired. He was panting, and cold sweat was dripping from his temples uncontrollably. You're really in a sorry state. You can only say that you're a snake in a dragon's coat. You have a golden exterior and a rotten interior. An emotionless voice came out of Dustless's throat. After Durag got out of this state, he was covered in blood. The long and narrow wounds almost swallowed him whole. If it weren't for the dragon fruit's powerful vitality, he might have died long ago. Wallow in your dreams forever. Just a glance, the so-called most vicious criminal in the world will forever wallow in the world of dreams. Nothing will happen if you voluntarily hand over law. Why do you have to end up like this? Falling beside Drago, Dustless stared at Drago, who had completely turned into a walking corpse, and whispered. As the saying goes, a good death is better than a bad life. Maybe if it were someone else, they would choose to compromise. The powerful eye power of Rinsei Sharingan is not something that Durag can bear. To be conservative, Dustless chose to use the right eye with a slightly weaker eye power, Tensigan, to search for traces of law. Pretending to be a savior, it turns out that the bad things he did are no less than me. Dustless looked at Drago with disdain, and there was a trace of contempt in his eyes. He thought that this old guy was really a god who saved the world, but after reading the memory in his mind, he found that his idea was too simple. Now the Revolutionary Army is only at the beginning of its establishment, its prestige is not enough, and it has not made any substantial action. It is active in the dark world, and life is difficult. Some people inevitably feel hesitant about the future, and they will shrink back and choose to be deserters. Most of these people are secretly executed. Hypocritical to the extreme. After a while, after reading all the memories of Drago, Dustless had mixed feelings. It is undeniable that Drago really has the revenge to unify the world, but his means are not very flattering. The reason why the Revolutionary Army is so low-key is that many people are looking for power rocks and ancient weapons. Both are weapons of mass destruction, and Drago obviously can't play with them. The ambition is not small. Pluton, Tianwang, and Sea King all want to take it for themselves. With a sneer, Dustless's handsome face was full of sarcasm. The Revolutionary Army is a group of uncouth people. It is impossible to get the ancient weapons. They who don't know the poneglyph will never find the location of the ancient weapons. In the whole world, only the survivor of Heir can understand the real poneglyph and can interpret the place where the ancient weapons are sleeping. A mysterious energy fluctuation gushed out from his palm and invaded Durag's mind. Dustless was rewriting Durag's memory. The memory of the past didn't change, but there was one more special command, to be loyal to him forever. After a while, Drago's look returned to normal. He still maintained the silence of the past. His wise and deep eyes were calm, and his eyes were full of respect when he looked at Dustless. One sentence also destroyed the image of this ferocious criminal that the world feared. Master, hearing this, Dustless nodded expressionlessly. The word master sounded very awkward and made him very uncomfortable. He originally wanted to correct Dragon Dark Fruit and change the way he addressed Dragon Dark Fruit, but after thinking about it, he gave up. After obtaining the Dark Fruit, Dustless would personally kill him and seize the ability of the Dragon Fruit. Ah! Chapter 460. Time flew by, and 3 days passed quietly between his fingers. Dustless Mariewa looked at the morning paper of the next day with interest, and the most conspicuous banner clearly left such words. A large number of pirates in Rogue Town were all annihilated by the marine without any escape. Shiki was killed on the spot, and Kaido was seriously injured and his whereabouts are unknown. His whereabouts are unknown, to some extent, he escaped. It is undeniable that Kaido does have that ability. After a moment of silence, Dustless's fingers tapped rhythmically on the transparent table. Whether it was the 100-beast Kaido or the golden lion Shiki, they were just passers-by in his long destiny, insignificant. He once again put on a desperate escape for the world. He deserves to be one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, in the future. Recalling Kaido's past, his heart was as calm as water. He was a person who performed miracles. Even if he slipped away from the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, Dustless would not be surprised. He was captured 18 times when he challenged the other Yonko, 4 emperors, and the marine. He was also tortured more than 1,000 times. Kaido had been sentenced to death 40 times. When he was hanged, his chains would break. When he was pressed onto the guillotine, his machete would shatter. When he was stabbed by a spear, his spear would break. He had sunk as many as 9 huge prison ships. This incredible record is enough to make the strong people all over the world afraid. It's really boring, those guys have been dustless to this point in order to save their face. Dustless said with a sigh of relief. Dustless saw the scene in Rogue Town that day, and it was indeed as recorded in the newspaper, but the newspaper did not mention anything about the heavy losses on their side. Obviously, the marine deliberately concealed the truth of the matter. This kind of thing is not surprising. It is the government's strength to invert right and wrong. Regardless of Dustless's Tenryubito face, Hawkeye said straightforwardly. Hearing that, Wu-chan casually shrugged his shoulders and smiled. He started to recall the initiator of all this, Dolag. Everything was thanks to that old man. After tampering with his memory, Dustless did not make things difficult for him. He was still the former leader of the Revolutionary Army, but he added a lot of spice to his memory. Search for the whereabouts of Nico Robin. Only by grabbing this key would he be able to open Pandora's ink box. Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral Sky will be promoted to the position of Fleet Admiral, and the new Admiral Sengoku will take over Sky's position and become the next Marine Fleet Admiral. Only in Hawkeye and Dustless's room, White Zetsu suddenly popped out of the ground and revealed even more shocking news. Hearing this, even with Hawkeye's calm temperament, he didn't recover for a while, his pupils dilated. The replacement of the Marine Fleet Admiral is not a trivial matter. The scope of indirect influence affects the whole world situation. Warring states, only he is qualified. Dustless said with a look of understanding in his eyes. Dustless, who knew this, was unusually calm, but gently nodded. Although he didn't know when Warring States would be promoted to the position of Fleet Admiral, he was sure that the person who would replace Sky would be Warring States. Because so far, Warring States is the only admiral in the Marine Headquarters and the only one who is eligible to be promoted to Fleet Admiral. Garp refused to be promoted to Admiral. Can the news be confirmed? White Zetsu. Looking up, Dustless asked calmly. No matter how Hawkeye reacted, he still cared about the accuracy of the news. After Warring States became the Marine Fleet Admiral, one of the major decisions laid the foundation of the whole world. This is natural. Warring States and Sky just came out of the office of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars. I am afraid it will not be long before they become Fleet Admiral Warring States and Sky Admiral. White Zetsu said confidently. Since the last time he was caught by the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, and even half of his body was burned, he retreated and began to spy carefully. Despite this, he still occasionally heard the conversation between Warring States and Sky. But the strange thing is that Warring States is obviously promoted to Fleet Admiral, but his face is unexpectedly ugly and scary. White Zetsu was puzzled when he remembered the gloomy face of Warring States that day. Promotion is a good thing, but Admiral Sensei, looked like he had lost his parents, which really made White Zetsu confused. This is something new. Hearing this, Hawkeye also interjected with curiosity. Promotion to Marine Fleet Admiral with a sad face, but the secret behind it is worth exploring. How is Fleet Admiral Sky's performance? If I didn't guess wrong, he should have the same ugly expression as Warring States. Looking at White Zetsu with a smile, Dustless asked mysteriously. He had already faintly guessed the content of the conversation between the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, and Sensei Sensei, Sensei Sensei, and Fleet Admiral Sky. Yes, Warring States and Sky's faces are extremely ugly. White Zetsu nodded when he heard the words, and the facts coincided with Dustless's guess. With a strange smile on the corner of his mouth, Dustless picked up the straight teacup on the table and took a sip with a pleasant look. His deep eyes were wise and full of rationality. As a Marine, it is a righteous force that defends the world with absolute justice. Naturally, it will not be easily defeated. Sky and Warring States are among the best among them. Now the strange face is really strange. If I didn't guess wrong, the deformed product of 7 Warlords of the Sea is about to be born. Dustless secretly murmured, although his guess is very certain. As a Marine of absolute justice, he naturally hates evil pirates, and 7 Warlords of the Sea is a special organization, an extreme pirate in the name of justice. Warring States and Sky have spent most of their lives dealing with pirates, and they are faced with the dilemma of suddenly joining forces with pirates. It must be difficult for them to accept it. Both in public and private, there is a feeling of betrayal. Their former comrades have fallen under the blade of the pirates, and the Marines shouldering the flag of justice are colluding with the pirates. This is no different from slapping their own face. What can you do if you struggle? In the end, your Marine is just the face of the government. It is dispensable. Walking out of the window, Dustless sighed with mixed feelings as he stared at the slowly dissipating Marine battleship in the distance. Strength is power, even if the Marine headquarters is unwilling, they can only bow their head. Chapter 461. The only thing that interests Dustless is that both Boa Hancock and Hawkeye have been tamed by him, and the future Shichibukai is equal to the lack of 2 suitable candidates. The position of Shichibukai is not something that can be done easily. At the very least, it is suitable to be a famous big pirate, and their strength must be recognized by the world. Let's go with the flow, these trivial things, leave it to the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, to worry about, it has nothing to do with me. With a silent sigh, the confusion disappeared, and Dustless was too lazy to entangle. The world government and Tenryubito are inextricably linked, but they are not very involved. Tenryubito is the behind-the-scenes boss of the government, and they can take care of the world without worrying about their employees. What's more, the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, will not ask for help from Tenryubito. Of course, they are more direct and disdainful. More than 99% of Tenryubito are synonymous with incompetence and uselessness in their eyes. There is one more thing, as if thinking of something, White Zetsu suddenly opened his mouth, and a strange color flashed in his eyes. It was originally a trivial matter, but after thinking about the cause and effect, he felt that it was necessary to tell Dustless. The recent sailing route of the Don Quixote pirates is a bit strange. After a moment of silence, White Zetsu spoke. A day ago, the Don Quixote pirates were still circling in the New World, and now the sailing route is completely opposite, and the destination is even more strange. Don Quixote pirates? Hearing this, Dustless frowned slightly, and a trace of dissatisfaction flashed in his eyes. Don Quixote Doflamingo is now just a small character, and Dustless can't see it, and it's an insignificant route problem. Seeing Dustless showing signs of anger, White Zetsu quickly said, the sailing track of the Don Quixote pirates is completely opposite from the original, and the destination seems to be sailing in the direction of Mariewa. With a sigh of relief, White Zetsu knew the truth, and such a strange sailing route was indeed too abnormal. Mariewa. Could it be that Doflamingo is going to turn over a new leaf and be reborn after surrendering himself? Hawkeye was obviously quite surprised and then joked in boredom. Doflamingo is a very evil pirate. He has done countless bad things. At a young age, the bounty on his head is much higher than that of some old pirates. Turn yourself in and repent? Unless the sun rises in the west. Rolling his eyes, Dustless shook his head and continued to analyze. Doflamingo is a different kind of pirate. His purpose is not as simple as other big pirates. He is meticulous and will use anyone he can to achieve his purpose. At such a young age, Doflamingo had sent Virgo to infiltrate the navy, starting from the most basic soldier. It could be seen that Doflamingo was a patient person. You dare to come to Mariewa on your own initiative. The calm eyes of the ancient well splashed with faint ripples, and the corners of his mouth outlined an arc of interest. After a moment's deliberation, young Ling's eyes regained their calm. He could vaguely guess the reason for Doflamingo's visit. It seems that he is going to lay his cards on the table. His courage and courage are not small. In the past, the reason why the Marines chased after Doflamingo, according to Dustless's speculation, was that they did not know his identity as a Tenryubito, and the second reason was that some Tenryubito were behind it. Doflamingo knows the so-called Mariewa national treasure. Although he doesn't know the specific content, it must be related to the life and death of Tenryubito, so it is not impossible for the Marines to chase Doflamingo behind his back. However, the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, are all old and cunning people. Even if he is a Tenryubito, if he is so bold, the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, may kill him. The status of Tenryubito is higher than the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, but in the end, the world is still respected by the strong, and only a Tenryubito like Dustless can face the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, calmly. As for those Tenryubito who are lazy all day long, they may not have the confidence of Dustless. Young master, what we are doing is no different from looking for death, we are just walking into a trap. On the calm sea, a large ship sailed at high speed. The bow was a fiery red bird, and a strong man with pink feathers stood on it, looking at the sea in front of him blankly. His heart was as calm as stagnant water. Behind him were the family cadres of the Don Quixote pirates, as well as the crew. Captain, Marine's Vice Admiral Tsuru could easily chase us all over the world. If we go to the world government's nest like this, 100 lives will not be enough. The sloppy man Treble persuaded the tall man at the bow of the ship, and his heart was extremely bitter. When mentioning the word captain, Treble deliberately emphasized the word, hoping that Doflamingo could take responsibility and not do stupid things. Law and the surgeon fruit could be restarted if they disappeared. Entering the tiger's mouth meant that they had completely stepped into hell. There is no doubt that the expressionless man with bronze skin in the bow of the ship is Doflamingo. Don't worry, Mariewa, I will go when I want to go. No one can stop me. Those 5 guys have to step aside. Hearing this, Doflamingo's mouth swept with an arrogant smile, and his cold heart was filled with warmth. After personally executing the traitor Corazon, he has regarded these crew members as family. Jumping off the bow and looking at the crew, Doflamingo nodded with satisfaction. But then again, you don't have to go with me. Those guys won't care about you. Doflamingo said in a deep voice, he can't shelter the crew who accompany him day and night. They won't dare to touch me. I'm different from those rubbish Tenryubito. Looking at the dark surface in the distance, Doflamingo smiled confidently. The unprecedented confidence in his tone made the crew tactfully shut their mouths. Within the Don Quixote pirates, he is the dictator, and no one can question Doflamingo's will, as well as his words and deeds. Thank you. If you like this book, tell me about the heroine you like. If conditions permit, I will add it. Chapter 462. Doflamingo's unbridled laughter resounded through the endless sky. He was extremely arrogant and proud. He looked straight ahead, embracing the entire sky. It was as if the entire surface of the sea and the entire world were right in front of his eyes. He could see everything with a single glance. The whole world, he didn't want to look at it as an equal, but he looked at it as a ruler and looked down on the ugliness of human nature. Doflamingo once swore that he would retaliate in his own way against this dirty world ruled by celestial dragons. The members of the Don Quixote family looked at each other and bowed their heads silently. Doflamingo was cruel to the enemy, but he treated his own people as his family. There was nothing to say. Brother, Treble was about to passionately choose to die with Doflamingo. Although the latter was quite moved, he waved his hand lightly. The so-called world government's nest, Mariewa, was no different from an afternoon stroll in the back garden in his eyes. I'm going to rob them, not to die. You will only be a burden if you follow me. Doflamingo's eyes were like torches, and he made the final decision. The world government was not a tourist destination, but a tiger's den. The government was worried about his identity as a celestial dragon, but they had no scruples about this group of crew members. It was impossible to directly catch or execute them. Young master, you are so obsessed with the world government, is it? Treble, who was sloppy and smelly, twisted his fat body and walked to Doflamingo's side, and said in a voice that could only be heard by two people, is it possible that you want to seek their protection? Treble's words were shocking, and Doflamingo just looked at him deeply, then nodded heavily, completely ignoring the disgusting smell on his body as if it didn't exist. We are big pirates in the New World. The government has no reason to accept us. In my opinion, as long as we come to the door, we will be locked in the deep-sea prison. The world government was sometimes more despicable than pirates. This was known to the world. In Treble's eyes, the government was an outlaw dressed in the cloak of justice. Every time they committed murder, they would dress up with the word justice in gorgeous clothes. He also knew why Doflamingo sought help from the government. Back then, he didn't agree with Doflamingo's proposal, but he couldn't do anything about it. In the end, Doflamingo did it without hesitation. No problem, I have found a big boss who can accept us, and he must be tempted by the chips I took out. Doflamingo looked at the blue sky in the distance and said with certainty. The oncoming sea breeze blew Doflamingo's blonde hair into a mess, and the feathers on his back danced in the wind. His whole person turned into a different scenery, and it was eye-catching. The only pity was that his spirited gaze was no longer as bright and spirited as before. Instead, it was filled with a different kind of sadness, enveloping an atmosphere of sadness. It was hard to imagine that the ambitious Doflamingo would be so sad. Treble's mouth squirmed, but he also closed his mouth. He knew that Doflamingo's identity was not simple, and he was not the kind of person who would take risks. They only needed to silently support him. In the future, I still hope to rule the world, but that little rascal Law. It's a pity that he can't be used. Suddenly, an ancient drawing appeared in his hand. It was drawn with a messy and neat pattern, full of traces of the vicissitudes of time. The paper was waxen yellow, and it was probably hundreds of years old. The unknown paper even had many holes, and it was no different from waste paper. Even if it was dilapidated to such an extent, Doflamingo was still cautious. As if he had received a treasure, he remained cautious and did not dare to be careless. He held it tightly in his hand, and it seemed that it was more precious than his life. You don't agree to my conditions? Do you dare? Kiki. After a while, a gloomy laughter that made one's scalp numb came from Doflamingo's throat. Following his line of sight, one could vaguely see the pattern on the old paper, which recorded all kinds of accurate data. It was an unprecedented behemoth. After its pure area was enlarged, it was even larger than an island. Oi, Treble, the young master doesn't seem to be right recently. I feel like he's missing a string. A sturdy man in armor quietly walked in front of Treble and whispered softly. This person was called Pica, and he was also the mainstay of the Don Quixote pirates. This is just an extreme performance of the young master venting his excessive excitement. Don't care about the details. Treble's mouth twitched, and his fat face changed slightly. Since the last battle of Logue Town, Shiki died, and Kaido's whereabouts were unknown, Doflamingo's mood changed greatly. He lost the wisdom of a captain, and his face was gloomy all day long. Since when did the two of you like to gossip so much? Treble and Pica whispered conversation, and Doflamingo, who had good attainments in observation hockey, naturally heard it, and he just snorted coldly. The two also closed their mouths. Ha! If those drawings fall into the hands of the pirates of the New World, I'm afraid that the world government will jump up and down to find the celestial dragons to save their lives. Doflamingo smiled, and his whole person showed an unprecedented crazy posture. Although it's just a simple and casual drawing, if it falls into the hands of some pirates who hate the government and the marine, it will cause a huge shock. When it comes out, it's likely to be the end of an era. Although the conditions for opening it are extremely harsh, these are nothing. For example, a big pirate like Kaido, who hates the government, has a monstrous force, and has countless islands under his command, is fully capable of reviving the terrible thing on the blueprint. Chapter 463. It was because of this mysterious and very deterrent existence that Doflamingo could leisurely walk in the world government, even if he came to the world government as a pirate. No one dared to move. If this kind of nuclear weapon was exposed, it meant that the whole world would be contaminated by nuclear pollution. He became crazy. You want to fight with me? Sooner or later, this world will be mine. The bronze-colored muscles all over his body bulged, and a powerful roar spread out. The invisible impact contained some kind of indescribable special energy fluctuation, and it was rapidly oppressive and soul-sucking. The sky rippled, and the clouds that touched it were instantly annihilated. The progress is so fast, can Haoshiku be used to this extent? Treble was surprised, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. At first, he just appreciated the young Doflamingo, and he had the temperament of a king at such a young age. He gave him the multi-thread fruit, which was also in line with the nature of a pirate. It was completely a gamble. But now, it seemed that he had not sacrificed his life for the sake of the heavens and earth. Instead, he was reaping huge profits today. 2 days later, World Government Mariehua. On the balcony, Dustless looked lazy, lying comfortably on the couch, and the warm sunshine immediately shone. His cheeks were full of sunshine, and his smile was as warm as jade. It was the opposite of the dark him in the past. The ability to make the sky jealous, leisurely looking at the devil fruit with different abilities, Dustless choked in his throat. Even if he now has all kinds of means and countless cards, he was still fascinated by the various abilities of the devil fruit. He thought that the variety of ninjutsu was really an advantage, but now it seems that the same is true for the devil fruit. Some of the devil fruit's abilities are even more shocking than Dustless's imagination. Hancock, how is the collection of devil fruit? Feeling the warmth from the most important part of a man, Dustless felt a burst of excitement. He looked up and saw Hancock, who was working hard with her thin lips. As the saying goes, after a few times, although Hancock was still a little shy, she was not as resistant as before. Perhaps the nature of a slave has been deeply ingrained in her bones, and her thoughts are also deeply ingrained. Oh, Hancock, who was dressed in a black maid costume, wiped her wet lips with a lace scarf and stood respectfully on the right side of Wu Chen. Her voice was pleasant to the ears. There are a lot of gains, but most of them are ordinary goods. There are no refreshing abilities. Hancock's expression instantly changed, and she said rather seriously. Dustless did everything that Dustless asked her to do. Continue collecting. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with disappointment. There was no specific information about some of the devil fruits in the illustrated handbook, so it was extremely difficult to find them. Dustless waved his hand and signaled Hancock to retreat, then he closed his eyes. Ta-ta-ta, the rhythmic sound of leather shoes sounded, and Hancock was nowhere to be seen. In the spacious room, there was only Wu Chen basking in the sun alone on the balcony. After a while, Dustless opened his eyes again, revealing a puzzled expression. Where did these weird devil fruits originate? A long time ago, Dustless wondered about the origin of devil fruits. These fruits with magical abilities could not fall out of thin air. After the fall of each generation of devil fruit's host, the devil fruit owned by the host will reappear in other places in the world, so it goes on endlessly, as if the curse will continue forever. Dustless Sama. White Zetsu, who was composed of monotonous white, appeared like a ghost, and the world was like his nest, casual and simple. Is it possible that Doflamingo has arrived at Mariewa? Raising his eyelids, he looked at the void in front of him, and his dead eyes finally showed some vitality. That's not it. Law has been found. After the return of Rogue Town, Dustless told White Zetsu word for word about the trace of Law that he got from Dorag's mind. After several days, Law finally got it. Do you want to bring him back immediately? White Zetsu asked coldly. Although his strength was extremely ordinary, it was easy to deal with a little demon like Law. White Zetsu thought that it would be a trivial matter to fight 10 laws. Hearing this, Dustless thought about it seriously and chose to shake his head. Life should be full of surprises. Planning his life, maybe it will run counter to the results we expect. Just keep an eye on his traces. It is all kinds of sudden accidents that combine to create the special Tragafar law, and forcing him to change his outlook on life will only be counterproductive. Wuchen smiled and said, even if Sun Wukong exhausted all his strength, he still wouldn't be able to jump out of Tathagata's 5-finger mountain. Don't even think about it, now Law is just a child. Not to mention the extreme surgery of immortal surgery, he doesn't even have the ability to control surgeon fruit. The strong hatred born of the killing of Corazon is the driving force that drives Law to continue to become stronger. With this strong hatred, he will have the motivation to improve. In this regard, Law is quite similar to someone Dustless once knew. Sasuke. The experience is surprisingly similar. Although there are some differences in personality, some aspects are also in line, so you are destined to have the same ending. Sasuke, his younger brother, was killed by Dustless himself and was finally burned into nothingness by Amaterasu. In the future, Law is also destined to fall and sacrifice for Dustless's plan. Some people are destined to be the foil of others. Bang bang bang, in the clean and cheerful void, there was an explosion of air bursting without warning. Looking far away, thin lines that could not be captured by the naked eye covered the void. An arrogant figure came into view, stepping straight on these thin lines and rushing over. It seemed to be a direct air attack on Mariewa. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.